What's going on, everyone? I hope you're having a fabulous day out there. You're listening to the, Conservative Speaking podcast. Basically what we're doing here, I'm sitting here with Brian Thomsen. And those of you guys who do not know Brian, he is a conservative Republican running for the 17th district, congressional district of or just around Pittsburgh, right?
It's in Pennsylvania, yeah, right. So it's the 17th congressional district. It's Allegheny County and Beaver County. We're looking at north and west of Pittsburgh, the northern parts and the western parts of Allegheny County and all of Beaver County.
Gotcha. And what we're trying to aim here, and for those of you guys who do not know me, my name is Jameson S. I'm working with Brian on his campaign, and we're just going to kick this thing off and talk about the issues of the day, things that matter. Because look, let's face it, people out on the street, they want a better. They're just trying to provide for their families, right, Brian?
Right. Look, the idea is that people in the district, people around Pittsburgh, like all of us, I think, we're just trying to work hard and take care of our families and having a direction for our lives and a purpose for our lives. And this is just to give you a quick snapshot of where we're at in the news from a conservative perspective, and make sure we address the issues that are here and local and impact your lives.
Mm-hmm. Yeah, the conservative perspective, I think, gets not enough attention in the liberal media, so that's another reason why we're just kind of throwing this out there and see who listens, because I think truth be told, more conservative Republicans would like to have more media around their point of view.
Absolutely. I think that hearing things that don't cause you to get infuriated while listening to the news definitely helps. Look, I'm fact and data driven. I don't really like to have the nuances of trying to persuade me one way or the other. Let me have the facts, let me have the data, and allow me to make my own opinion. A lot of what we're trying to do here is give you the facts, give you the data, and how it's going to affect your lives from a conservative perspective, a perspective of individual liberty and freedom.
Yeah, free thinking. Absolutely. I think a lot of times the data and the real information gets left behind and is left to opinionated sources only. And yeah, that's just a no-go. Anyways, I don't know if I introduced myself or not. My name is Jameson, and here we are, I guess. So, Brian, why don't you kick this thing off and tell us what we're going to cover today and some of the topics we're going to.
Well, we want to look at some of the things that are definitely here local in the Pittsburgh area and in our district, but in the Pittsburgh area in general, but also some of the topics that really caught our attention in the national media, and things that really strike a chord, I believe, with what we're trying to do as far as freedoms and liberty and honestly just doing the right things. We're talking about the things going on overseas, the coronavirus and China and how it impacts us here in the Pittsburgh area. We're talking about some of the things with President Trump and the tracking poll, and how Mike Bloomberg is trying to attack him and what he's doing to try to persuade the American people to see things his way. We're looking at the deficit and where we're at right now, what the CBO report says that just came out. We also want to kind of touch on the economic development here in Pittsburgh, and even so far as to talk about the impeachment trial and Judge Roberts' position on the whistleblower and the conservative argument from Rand Paul about whether or not that name should be released, whether he should be pulled out, whether he's got protections. There's a lot to that, and I really would like to try and unpack that a little bit this morning.
Yeah, so all things considered, this podcast is for the guy out there who's at work, likes to listen to radio, but not the liberal radio, would like to have the extra content, and the guy out there on his delivery runs in your district here you're running for. I mean, this is content for you guys out there who are red conservatives and you want to know more. I mean, look, we're covering some of the daily news here, and that's what we're going to be really diving into, and how it affects not only your daily life and what you're trying to do with your life, but also the future of this country. So let's get
So let's get into it. So I mean, one of the things that I wanted to point out here is that there's a tracking poll that just came out, Microsoft tracking poll, that's looking at where the support for the president is. And one thing I did notice is, yes, since just before the Christmas time frame, President Trump's support has been increasing.
Right.
At a fairly steady click. But one thing I also noticed on that was that the opposition to the president was declining at a higher rate than the support was going up. I see that as a positive thing, to where normally you see in our divisive nature, society we have currently right now, where the opposition is very equivalent to where the Democratic position is. That opposition is dropping off. Now, whether that's independents turning to be more supportive of the president, or even Democrats becoming more supportive, or at least not in opposition of what the president's doing. So I see it as a win-win on the conservative side, whether it's independents swaying to our party platform or see what the president is doing that's beneficial to them, or it is Democrats coming over. We just saw that in New Jersey. President supporting.
Right, exactly.
Supporting the representative and going from the Democratic Party to the Republican Party, because he couldn't support what the Democrats were advocating, the socialism and the higher levels of control, the Green New Deal and all that. So even one of the things that came out in the news yesterday was Alan Dershowitz saying that right now we're in an era that's even more divisive than McCarthyism. And I would put some credence behind that, considering the more liberal views that Professor Dershowitz has, and he was alive then, so he has some knowledge from that era.
Insight. Sure.
And today, he has some good insight, and the way he sees this in light of his experiences in history, it's very divisive, and I am wholly for let's get some unity back into United States of America.
Yeah, I appreciate what you're saying there. Absolutely. Brian, why don't you tell us out there, for all the listeners, why you kind of decide to pick up the torch and run for Congress here outside the Pittsburgh area, in Allegheny County and the 17th District, Beaver County, all that. Tell them listeners out there why.
Honestly, I spent a career in the military. There's 24 years that I spent in the military. Most of that as a Green Beret. I've been all over the world and have been able to affect change, affect people, and have a dramatic impact. Not just in my teams, not just in my family, my children, my grandchildren, but also in other groups of people that I either work with, work for, helping in their situations. And this is just, it's a calling, it's an opportunity. I've spent my life positively impacting other people's lives and other people. And when this was really brought to my attention and it was revealed to me, look at the impact that you can make. Look at how many people that you can help, even in their daily lives. You can make things different or better for them, whether it be in taxes, whether it be in public policy, whatever it is. You can stand up and fight for the people in this district. You can make a difference in their lives. So having that presented before me, and the encouragement from those around me that aren't going to benefit from me running.
Right.
These aren't people that are going to say that I'm getting something out of you trying to get in office. It's people that have very intimate knowledge of me, saying, yes, that's a good direction. They know my heart. They know how I think and how I feel, and say that there's a great fit, and they could see that natural calling.
They basically says, Brian, we believe in you. You would be an excellent not only advocate, but spokesman for the community. Why don't you run? Why don't you do that? I mean, it would be very good if you did that. So that's where you're going.
And honestly, look, I would, my natural inclination would be to shy away from politics.
Sure.
it's muckraking, it's throwing mud at each other,
God.
it's people stabbing you in the back. It's what we it's why we've got probably less than 30% approval rating of Congress right now, because you can't trust what you hear. You can't believe what your politicians are telling you. And one of the things I want to come to this position saying is that I'm going to tell you what I plan on doing and where my heart is and what my goal and vision is. And if you don't like it, don't vote for me. This is exactly what I want to do. I want to stand up for people's rights and liberties and give you the opportunity to choose the direction for your lives, to live your life without the, I don't want to say the word oppression, but almost without the weight of the government on top of you. To provide freedom for people. Look, maybe a lot of it comes from my training, and I don't think it's from my training. I think it's more the connection between who and what I am and the profiling that puts us into being considered for Green Berets and going through that evaluation. It really is about seeing people liberated from oppression so they can do things that help themselves. Our motto is "De oppresso liberis," to free the oppressed. Now, granted, the idea behind that was to do that in other countries, but I think the same thing applies here.
Absolutely.
Look, if we are in a government or in a community where people aren't free to take care of their lives and take care of their families and be able to lead the best life they can without being controlled, absolutely, let's do that. Let's help people help themselves and help their neighbors as well.
Absolutely. A lot of people out there, they're not really political. They keep their thoughts to themselves while at work because they're incredibly afraid of being attacked. And not only that, look, I'll be straight with you, and everybody out there, I was not a very big political guy up until maybe a year and a half ago. And it was basically at the point where I had to take a position, draw a line in the sand, and come out and say my political views.
Okay.
Because people around me in the community, well, we don't hear from you. We don't know what your views are. You're very neutral on things. Because I'm very agreeable. I didn't want to upset people, and I was slightly afraid. But I'm an old veteran, just like you, Brian. There's a time when you got to say, hey, these are my views.
It may not necessarily be the fear of it. Look, it's I don't want to say as a conservative, you're taught as a child to be respectful. I think all of us are taught to be respectful and polite as we're growing up. But I think that conservative view is that you maintain that level of respect and you want to, give people their due rights and their independence and liberties. And you don't want to project what you see and feel and believe onto somebody else. You don't want to cause somebody else to have to accommodate what you think and feel. And I think that's where you get people that are maybe not reluctant, but they just, keep it to themselves. They look at other people and they're more altruistic than they are selfish. They don't want to drive their ideology and their opinions onto somebody else.
I'm sure people out there would agree completely with that statement and those thoughts. So, we're moving on here. And
you know what? I think that's a good segue. We'll talk about somebody who's trying to drive their opinion and drive their thoughts and their ideology into the hearts and minds of everybody in this nation. We've seen Mike Bloomberg coming out here lately as a Democratic presidential candidate, and it seems as though he is trying to do what he's done in New York and by the election by just overwhelming the airwaves and the media with his message. You can't log on to a web page, you can't watch TV, you can't see a presentation that has ads without seeing Mike Bloomberg because he's bought up ad space everywhere. I mean, so far, I know he's spent over $200 million on advertising, and he's pledged to spend $2 billion to remove President Trump from office.
You know why he's doing all this, right? He wants to take the actual space away from, the conservatives and Trump, during the presidential election to try to compete for the election, as far as drowning Trump out and taking the space away and trying to buy the influence.
It is. It necessarily is an effort to buy an election or to economically deny an election.
And nobody's really following his message. People are actually out there, they're somewhat repulsed by the fact of his very progressive liberal ideology.
Well, here's the way I see it, and I understand economic warfare, and I understand it completely, but I don't know that it translates to the people on the street, the people that go into work 8 hours a day, that
completely
try to get that overtime to make ends meet or get a little bit ahead, because you're looking at somebody who's willing to pledge $2 billion just to try and change an election, to try and sway you to change your vote.
Mm-hmm.
That is a form of oppression. That's manipulation at its true form. He's trying to manipulate you to change your vote. The common American citizen, and it's very disingenuous.
It's being very disingenuous to the people out there. I agree completely. Now, I will say that he's making this all politically correct, and he's not really, looking at the real problems in the communities. He's just trying to use the space as a platform, maybe just to increase his own brand name.
Quite possible. Yeah, I mean, if nothing else, you're seeing Mike Bloomberg's face more and more. You're hearing his ideology, and you're hearing him come against and make statements against the president.
Yeah, speaking about the president, there's a Microsoft tracking poll that just came out, and it says a lot of the opposition or people who have not in history supported the president or been against the president are now going neutral instead of being against the president. Can you tell us more about that?
Yeah, a little bit. We can review that a little bit, because we were talking about where the people that are maybe neutral, maybe they're independents, maybe they're Democrats. You're seeing the opposition to the president drop down faster, even though he's gaining more support. You're also seeing the opposition drop down. So yeah, it's a win-win on both sides for the president.
Absolutely.
At least from what our Microsoft tracking poll is showing us. Honestly, I think it was most evident in the New Jersey rally that the president had just a few days ago, because when you register to go to the rallies, you have to get tickets, you have to sign up online. And when you do that, they collect some demographics. They see if you're a Republican, they see if you're a Democrat, they see if you're an independent, they see if you voted last time. And granted, it's all voluntary, but it's very clear-cut questions. And in New Jersey, the people that were attending the rally, over 20% were stated Democrats.
Oh, they were Democrats.
Yes.
Okay. All right.
And over 12 to 15, I'm trying to remember the numbers because it's not sitting in front of me. 12 to 15% didn't vote last election.
I believe
that.
Yeah.
So yeah, we're seeing a lot of change, a lot of shift in the support and the backing for President Trump. I think it will continue, especially through the impeachment process and how that's going, and all the attacks and the smear campaign, whether it be Mike Bloomberg trying to do it or what we see going on in the news with this last week of occupying the Senate and the Capitol building, of running through this impeachment case trial.
It's a sham trial, sure, yeah.
I mean, so much that look, Jameson, you and I have both spent a considerable amount of time in government and military service, and there are good reasons to have protections for whistleblowers.
Completely.
I mean, I've seen it. I've seen abuse of power on the military. I've seen people that have very toxic leadership environments. Having whistleblower protections allows somebody to seek resolution and having protection from reciprocity. Great, needs to be there. But anytime I ever saw it or had to deal with it, it was the person that was affected that got to, make that claim of, hey, I'm a whistleblower, I need to be protected. What they're saying now, and what I really have a problem with, an issue with, is Judge Roberts saying that the whistleblower needs that protection based on a policy that was changed right before the whistleblower made the statements that allows the whistleblower to be protected even though the information's hearsay.
Right.
So it's second and third party. I didn't see it. I wasn't involved. Somebody told me about it, and I'm going to make a whistleblower complaint. It doesn't stand up in law. It doesn't stand up in court.
Yes.
It shouldn't stand up here, by my opinion. I've never seen it done that way. My personal opinion is that it is intentionally done to manipulate the laws and change the policy so that this impeachment can go forward. I think this has been planned as collusion, a conspiracy, without trying to be a conspiracy theorist.
Just for an example purposes, what we're talking about here is equated down to a digestible level. It's like Tommy at the middle school going above the president to the school board and saying, hey, little Sally told me that the principal and the teachers in the school are talking out of school. Is that a good example?
Kind of something like that, absolutely. I mean, you've got somebody who heard somebody say that they were threatened.
Sure.
You're in school and somebody says, hey, this person said they're going to beat me up. And you go to the principal and you say, hey, Joe said Frank is going to beat him up.
Right.
I get that, and maybe that needs to happen. But you, being a second party to this, being outside of the actual engagement, aren't the one that needs to be protected.
Right.
You're outside of it.
Sure.
So there's no reason that this supposed whistleblower, who's not a whistleblower,
No.
He's just somebody who's making a statement about something he heard.
Right.
I got it. You're reporting on something you heard. Let's prove it. Let's see if it's real.
Right.
But you're not obligated to have whistleblower protections. And I think where Senator Rand Paul is wanting to name the whistleblower has every right to do that. This person of interest is called a whistleblower, known as a whistleblower, should not be held underneath whistleblower protections.
I appreciate those thoughts. I really do. It's a unique perspective, and I think a lot of people share that perspective on the right side of, of our border there. Moving on here, Krystal Biotech in the Pittsburgh area.
Well, look, we can talk about a lot of the economic stuff, absolutely, because for here locally, we've got some positive news economically for our national level. Our economy is doing well, but as a whole, financially and where we're at as far as our budget and our deficit, it's not such good news. So, we've heard recent news of the Krystal Biotech is breaking ground and starting they're building their new facility, their 100,000 square foot facility for a topical genetic treatment application, drug that they're developing, which is phenomenal.
So, what does Krystal Biotech do? They're like they solve medical mysteries, right? Or
well, yeah, I mean it's a pharmaceutical company, a biotechnical company that is
manufacturing,
taking on the challenges. Well, they're doing R&D and they're manufacturing. So,
excellent.
So their facility here is going to be doing everything from the R&D, the development, the creation of the product, and the manufacturing. So it's all the way through the process is going to be here.
That's excellent.
The biggest thing is that the idea is that they're showing us that you can take an area that is known for technical innovation, and not just innovate here, because we have the universities, we have the innovation here in the Pittsburgh area, but it doesn't have to stop there. It doesn't have to go somewhere else for development and commercialization. Those resources are here too. There's no reason to have to ship it somewhere else and to move the idea to another area for further development and seeing it go to market. We can do it right here in the Pittsburgh area.
Excellent. And how is this, them putting a facility in your district, how is that going to help the people out here? That's what people are going to ask.
Well, I get it. And the majority of the jobs that we have are small and medium-sized industry. So we're looking at 70 employees. Not huge. Nope. Not at all.
But they project.
But those are 70 jobs.
Mm-hmm.
And we also have the support employment going on. We've got the contractors. We've got the maintenance personnel. We've got the support for the technical support going on within the facility. If they've got 70 employees, they probably don't have their own IT company.
Sure.
Their internal IT supports. They've got to outsource that. They've got to outsource a lot of their support, the requirements that they need to operate. So yeah, they've got 70 jobs, but they're also creating that requirement and the opportunity for increased employment. Look, these are revenues for the area.
Right.
And those revenues get spent in this area, in the local economy. So it's creating more jobs than just the 70 we're talking about here.
Oh, absolutely it is. It's a complete network that's spreading in the economy itself.
Now, we're talking about the economy. We've got to talk about the national economy here.
Oh, boy.
The CBO, the Congressional Budget Office, just came out with a projection that, I was talking earlier about, we don't need to be afraid. We don't really need to be fearful. This kind of makes me step back and have some concern.
Oh, you should. Absolutely.
We're looking at our budget deficits year after year, year on year, without having some major changes in how we spend money at the federal level. They're projecting we're going to have trillion-dollar deficits indefinitely. That's the word they use, is indefinite deficits at $1 trillion or more yearly. That's incredible. We cannot
That's not sustainable.
do that. No, it's not sustainable. If we're at $24 trillion in debt right now,
mm-hmm.
our economy, we cannot handle it.
It's threatening the entire United States government. It's threatening our way of life. And, there's a lot of worry there.
And, from my very, very conservative viewpoint, if our families have to balance checkbooks and we can't just carry credit and keep it growing and growing and growing, as dealing with business owners, you can't do that.
No.
You can't sustain operations by just going out and borrowing more and more and more money, going deeper and deeper and deeper in debt.
Right.
So there's should not happen at the federal level. Even the states cannot do that. States can't sit there and borrow and borrow and borrow more money.
And that's the problem we've been seeing with California and why it's defaulted.
Correct.
Mm-hmm. Or Greece.
And we've seen this, in our territories in Puerto Rico.
Right.
We're looking at, granted, there were $78 billion that they defaulted on, but look at where we're at. We're talking about trillions.
Trillions of
and
dollars.
$1 trillion a year.
See, guys,
in increased deficit, increased debt.
The guys out there driving the trucks, out there in construction work on the roads. These numbers are so large that it doesn't even compute. And, I get it. Look, you can only do what you can do. And maybe you didn't go to college. Maybe you don't understand this high-level finance in the government. This is a pretty simple, how can I say, description of how the deficit could affect our lives. But what I'm trying to say here is not everybody understands these numbers and how detrimental it could be to our future. This is
how it applies to us, and I think that's maybe something we should really maybe not get too in depth into, but at least make the relation is that on a global scale, if we keep printing dollars, if we keep devaluing the U.S. dollar, what you're making right now ends up not being able to buy you near as much. You've got
we've been seeing
you have inflation going on.
Exactly.
Whereas on a global marketplace right now, the dollar is super strong, and I understand the reasons for trade, the interest in trade and having a weaker dollar, but at the family level, at your personal level,
sure, absolutely.
Let's make sure that your dollar goes as far as it can. And yeah, you see, if we would get to a point where the U.S. government as a whole sees a default on being able to pay our interest on our outstanding debt, then yeah, you'll see a dramatic change in interest rates and a dramatic change across the board with jobs and manufacturing and the lot, because our economy will take a strong downturn.
Yeah, I mean, it's a really deep subject. It's really fascinating to go into. There are no easy answers there, but I was thinking there's something else going on in Pittsburgh.
Well, one thing we're thinking about on the global economy, global economic scale, and we've seen this, although it benefits us positively as we see gas prices kind of go down a little bit in the commodity market, where oil prices are going down because of the coronavirus in China. The outbreak of the coronavirus, because it's having such a broad impact in China and they're having to quarantine so many people, manufacturing in certain areas of China are having to shut down. You've got cities that are in quarantine where people can't go to work because they've got a great concern of a broader pandemic than they already have.
Exactly.
So it's really got a huge impact on our global economy and how it's even impacting us here in Pittsburgh. PPG has a manufacturing facility in Wuhan, which is the epicenter of the coronavirus pandemic.
So, I mean, there's a local connection here.
There's a local connection. There's another local connection with Brother's Brother, and I know Ozzy Samar, he and I have spoken about Brother's Brother Foundation and the work they've been doing in Africa with logistics of medical supplies and such for helping people in need in Africa. And here you're seeing where they're reaching out for an area that's in dire need, and they're providing aid to the Wuhan province in China. So that's our local Pittsburgh connection with what's going on the other side of the world. So and trying to combat it so that we don't have to fight the pandemic here, hopefully.
Sure, it affects across the world. This is far-reaching, so because everything in today's day and age is so connected. So no matter where you go, you're going to have a connection somewhere, and it affects people's lives.
It does. I mean, it affects us at a familial level. It affects our children. It affects our siblings, our parents. We have to think about the connections, especially with how small the world has gotten. We've got people that are traveling all over the world for work. We've got our goods and services and products, impacting the world in the world marketplace and the world economy. So it's something we have to pay attention to and be careful of.
I agree. That's a very interesting point you made there. Well, I think that's going to wrap things up. We've made some interesting points. We talked about some interesting subjects and topics. We talked about a little bit by Mr. Thomsen here is running for Congress in the 17th District of Pennsylvania in Western Pennsylvania. And, that's going to conclude our little daytime talk show here. And, hey, we encourage you guys out there not only to listen in on Twitter, but this is going to be across Anchor, radio, websites out there. It's going to be on YouTube. So check back in daily to get your dose of daily conservative Republican talk. I mean, join us daily.
Yeah, here's some conservatively speaking.
Absolutely. Hey, we appreciate you listening, and I guess until next time, until tomorrow, we'll see you later.